Chuts! Today, Cryptocurrency Academy is going to tell you the story of Ethereum Classic, ETC, a strange story in crypto. It wasn't born from a brand new idea, it was born from a crack. And that crack wasn't small. It split a community, split beliefs, and split the meaning of right and wrong. Many coins explode because of marketing, memes, or promises. ETC exploded because of a principle. Sounds dry? Trust me, in crypto, principles can create the biggest explosions. Because when money flows in, everyone smiles. When money disappears, everyone cries. And then the real question shows up. Are we playing a financial game, or are we building a system of belief? ETC answers like steel. What the chain recorded must not be rewritten. Sometimes the cost of that hardness is brutal, but the reward can be shockingly real. Crypto explained. In the end, the market tests your values before it tests your wallet. Back in 2015 to early 2016, Ethereum was the new star. Smart contracts felt like a new set of eyes, not just moving money, but programming money. The world rushed in because everyone wanted to be early. Then the DAO arrived like a fever. People called it a decentralized investment fund. Cool, new, futuristic. Money poured in, and belief poured in with it. Many people thought, we're about to leap past traditional finance. They talked like banks would vanish tomorrow. And in that intoxicated air, one human truth got ignored. Code is written by humans. Humans make mistakes. And in finance, mistakes don't accept apologies. Crypto isn't like normal life. In normal life, you fix the error. In crypto, sometimes there's only one word, done. And then, done for real, reality throws a punch. In June 2016, the DAO was exploited. Not a rumor. Money was draining out in real time, like a bucket with a hole in the bottom. The whole community went numb. People stared at the screen, stared at the numbers, and it felt like getting gutted. This wasn't losing a few percent. This was losing faith in what they had just worshipped. And instantly, two ideas smashed together like two trucks. One side said, save the investors, reverse it. The other side said, if it's blockchain, you don't reverse it. Reversing it is betrayal. That was the moment crypto exposed its truth. It's decentralized, but humans still decide. A technical argument became a moral argument. And when morality touches money, it burns. Crypto explained, the hottest debates usually appear right after the biggest losses. Then the hard fork arrived. In July 2016, Ethereum split into two directions. One direction chose to change the state to return funds, continuing under the name Ethereum, ETH. The other direction said, no, the original chain is the original chain. No edits. And that's when Ethereum Classic, ETC, showed up like a hard-to-raise kid. Not loved by the majority, not favored by the headlines, but holding something extremely dangerous in crypto, a story. ETC didn't need glitter. It needed one sentence, code is law. And that sentence pulled in people who hate compromise. You can agree or disagree, but you have to admit this. When a group believes a one line enough to walk against the crowd, it doesn't die easily. Crypto explained, conviction is a survival trait. But let's be honest, ETC's early days were not pretty. It got called a copy, called leftovers, called the branch that would fade away. Like a small shop cut off from a big chain. People walked by, looked in, and shook their heads. And that's exactly what makes ETC fascinating. A coin priced as less, powered by ideals, walking into the wildest market on Earth. Because crypto doesn't care if you're morally right. Crypto cares about supply, demand, and psychology. Today they mock you, tomorrow they FOMO you. That's the market. Cold, brutal, but fair in one way. Whoever can endure, survives. ETC entered with the label Original Chain, and the original chain always attracts a certain type of believer. The group is small but stubborn, and in the messiest days, that stubbornness creates the first big spikes, Crypto explained. Being underestimated is sometimes the best entry price. On July 25, 2016, ETC traded like pure crypto. Chaos, whiplash, shaky buyers, smug sellers. Price hovered around $0.6024. Somewhere in a small garage in Michigan, hands still stained with engine oil, a man opened his phone and stared at the brand new ticker, ETC. No long analysis, just a very American, very direct thought. They say the original chain will die? Fine. Then I'll buy what they're disrespecting. He bought 8,000 ETC that day at $0.6024. Simple math. 8,000 times is 0.6024. So he put in $4,819.2. That's not spare change. That's repairs, insurance, real life. And the feeling when he tapped buy, it was strange. Fear and thrill at the same time, like betting on a principle, Crypto explained. Sometimes you're not buying a coin, you're buying a narrative the crowd hasn't understood yet. In the months after, emotions moved like a free-falling elevator. Some days he opened the app and saw green, and he felt like a genius. Other days he saw red and thought, am I stupid? That's real psychology. And ETC was harder because you weren't just holding a coin, you were holding a controversy. Every time someone insulted ETC, it felt like they were insulting your decision. Every time ETH made headlines, it felt like you were outside the party. But he held. Not because he was stubborn, but because code is law became something to hold on to. Then 2017 started heating up. Bitcoin heated up, altcoins heated up, everything heated up. And when the market gets hot, the forgotten stories get pulled back out like gold at the bottom of a drawer. People started saying, wait, this original chain is still alive? And the moment people ask that, you know what comes next. Curiosity turns into FOMO. Crypto explained, attention is the first candle of a pump. Early 2017, ETC pushed upgrades and community activity to prove, I'm not a corpse. The broader market was insane. ICOs sprouted like mushrooms. Everyone was a founder. Everyone was an advisor. Everyone promised to revolutionize. It was crazy, and it was fuel for price. ETC benefited from that madness. Understand this, new investors don't read blockchain philosophy. They look at charts. Green means right. Red means wrong. That's it. So a coin with drama, the Ethereum name, and a low price becomes perfect for speculation. And with speculation, one spark is enough for the crowd to rush in like a swarm. On March 1st, 2017, ETC sat around $1.3999. Still small, but it was a signal. It's not dead. Crypto explained, survival alone can become a catalyst. In Arizona, a woman working as an accountant for a small restaurant chain lived a tight, realistic life. Days were spreadsheets, nights were 2 kids. She didn't dream of getting rich fast, but she hated one feeling, being left behind by the market. She looked at ETC and said something brutally honest. If ETH is the big party, ETC is the side door, and side doors are sometimes cheaper. She bought 15,000 ETC on March 1st, 2017 at $1.3999. The cost was 15,000 times 1.3999, so she put in $20,998.5. That was years of savings. After tapping buy, she didn't jump. She didn't tell anyone. She just sat there, heart pounding, because she knew this could become regret, or it could become a life shift. Crypto explained, the quietest positions are usually the realest ones. Then June 2017 arrived. The market looked possessed. Everything pumped. Everything got pushed. And ETC, the forgotten coin, started climbing like revenge. She watched the price jump by the day, by the hour, and it felt like a movie where the underdog suddenly flips the script. On June 23, 2017, ETC reached around $21.34. She didn't say, if I sell. She decided to sell all 15,000 ETC, one clean tap, because she felt greed creeping into her eyes, and greed is a killer in crypto. The proceeds came in, 15,000 times in 21.34, so she received $320,100. She had put in $20,998.5. Profit was $320,100 minus $20,998.5, so she received $299,101.5 in profit. She cried immediately, not because she felt rich, because for the first time being disciplined paid her back. She cleared her car debt, set aside money for her kids' education, and slept one night without money pressing on her chest. Crypto explained, "Profit hits hardest when it turns into peace." And the man in Michigan? He watched ETC keep running. By late 2017, the altcoin frenzy became a storm. News, YouTube, group chats, everything was Moon and Lambo, and ETC suddenly looked tasty because it carried the Ethereum name, carried the fork story, carried a community, and most importantly, carried a rising chart. On December 21, 2017, ETC traded around $42.10. He stopped dreaming, he cashed out. He sold 8,000 ETC at that level, 8,000 times 42.10, so he received $336,800. He had put in $4,819.2. Profit was $336,800 minus $4,819.2, so he received $331,980.8. And here's the point. That money didn't turn him into a loud, new rich guy. It turned him into a man who could breathe. He replaced the car that kept dying. He prepaid rent. He bought time back for his family. Crypto explained, "The biggest win is a lighter life." So what was ETC in this era? It was a test of belief and discipline. It teaches a sharp truth. The market can laugh at your principles today and reward your story tomorrow. But don't get fooled. ETC didn't rise because it was right. It rose because the crowd found something to cling to, and because humans are always drawn to big splits and big drama. Crypto loves drama, and ETC is historical level drama. But trust this. After the late 2017 cheering, the noise will shut off again, screens will turn red again, and the question returns to the same place. What do you believe, and how much can you endure? ETC walked out of 2017 with a burst of glory, but its shadow grew longer behind it. And when the shadow grows, only disciplined people avoid getting swallowed. Crypto explained. The story continues, and the market gets colder. And then, after the late 2017 storm, the market does what it always does. It turns the music off. The lights stay on, but the cheering disappears. You open your app, and you no longer see green running wild. You see something cold as stone, red. Not the kind of red that means a small dip, but the kind that makes people go silent. This is where the truth shows up. A bull market makes everyone look smart. A bear market is what separates who can survive. ETC walks into 2018 with a long shadow of historical drama. But the market doesn't pay for drama forever. The market pays attention to one thing: how fast money exits and how deep belief collapses. And because ETC carries the Ethereum name and the original chain story, it can get pulled up hard in excitement. But when fear arrives, that same label can turn it into an easy target for dumping. The people who suffer most are the late entrants. They didn't buy a coin, they bought the feeling of certainty. And 2018 arrives to slap certainty in the face. Crypto explained, when the music stops, only discipline keeps you standing. 2018 is the kind of year that teaches without a teacher. It teaches through your account. It teaches through sleepless nights. And it teaches through one brutal sentence. The crowd is wrong more often than the crowd is right. With ETC, the drop isn't just price. The drop becomes a question. An original chain, but a smaller ecosystem, fewer developers, fewer apps. How does it survive? While ETH moves like a high-speed train with ICOs and early DEI energy, ETC feels like a stubborn truck. It runs, but it's loud and slow. The people who believe code is law are still there, but the market isn't paying for belief in a bear market. The market pays for flow, for what's hot, for what new money can understand in 5 seconds. ETC gets stuck between two worlds, philosophy on one side, practicality on the other. And when the bear market drags on, philosophy alone doesn't make your wallet hurt less. Crypto explained, "A principle is powerful, but it still needs a market to reward it." In New Jersey, Marcus sells furniture. He talks well, but inside he's drawn to big opportunity. In early 2018, he looks at ETC and tells himself, "ETH is expensive now. ETC is Ethereum but cheaper, so it has to run again." On January 16, 2018, ETC trades around $39.50. Marcus decides to buy 300 ETC. He puts in 300 times 39.50, so he puts in $11,850. After he taps buy, he feels proud, like he caught a bargain. But crypto hates early pride. It always finds a way to teach you when to shut up. A few weeks later, the price starts falling. Not one big drop, steady, stubborn, endless. Marcus looks at his account and experiences something new, money draining and him feeling powerless. Crypto explained, "The market punishes confidence when it isn't backed by a plan." By April 1, 2018, ETC is around $13.20. Marcus still refuses to accept it. Because humans hate losing, and in crypto, that hatred often becomes toxic hope. He doesn't sell. He says, "It'll come back." Then summer passes. Good news doesn't save the chart, and bad news keeps pressing down. On December 15, 2018, ETC is around $4.30. Marcus looks at that number and realizes he's being dragged by the market. He decides to sell all 300 ETC to stop the bleeding, because he starts fearing he'll lose his mind, not just his money. He receives 300 times 4.30, so he receives $1,290. His total cost was $11,850. The loss is $11,850 minus $1,290, so he loses $10,560. He doesn't cry. He goes quiet like the air got pulled out of his chest. And the sharpest pain isn't the money. It's the feeling that he believed wrong and stayed stubborn too long. Crypto explained, "The longest losses often come from the refusal to admit the first one." But ETC's story in 2018 isn't only price falling. It's also the survival math of a proof-of-work network with smaller hash power and more vulnerability. When the market cools off, miners move to what pays better, hash rate shifts, and security risks become louder. ETC starts to feel like a city with old walls, still standing, still guarded. But attackers look at it and see weak spots. And then 2019 into 2020 becomes the period where ETC gets mentioned not for exploding, but for headlines that make investors shiver. 51% attacks, chain reorganizations, and questions about how safe confirmed transactions really are. These are the kinds of headlines that hit the core of blockchain. Trust that confirmed means final. When final feels shaky, money automatically steps back. Crypto explained, "Security fears are the fastest way to turn buyers into spectators." After cutting his loss, Marcus doesn't want to hear the word crypto anymore. But the market loves to mess with people. Right when you hate it most, it starts to bounce. 2019 has recovery moves, but not enough to erase 2018. ETC rises, drops, rises again, like someone injured trying to run but still limping. Marcus still checks the chart sometimes, like looking at an X, angry but curious. He tells himself, never again. But crypto doesn't need you to return. It only needs enough people to return. And every time ETC twitches upward, people who lost like Marcus get pulled into a dangerous feeling. If only I had held. That if only is bait. It makes people forget the thing that killed them wasn't the coin, it was psychology. Crypto explained, "Regret is a door the market loves to open." In Colorado, Natalie works as an ER nurse. Her job teaches one truth: panic doesn't save anyone. She enters crypto not to go big, but to practice discipline with money. She hears about ETC, hears code is law, hears it's the original chain. But what catches her eye is simpler. After the 2018 collapse, the price is so cheap that everyone is trashing it. And when everyone is trashing something, opportunity can exist there if you're not crazy. On March 13th, 2020, right when markets panic during the pandemic shock, ETC trades around $3.70. Natalie decides to buy 2,500 ETC. She puts in 2,500 times 3.70, so she puts in $9,250. She doesn't smile. She doesn't brag. She writes one line in her notebook. Buy in fear, must have an exit plan. Crypto explained, fear is only useful when it pushes you to plan. 2020 is a strange year. It's fear and recovery at the same time. But ETC carries the extra pressure. Network security news keeps people suspicious, and that suspicion makes the price harder to run, like the loved coins. Natalie understands that, so she doesn't dream to the moon. She targets something practical. If the market gives a recovery move, sell part to reclaim capital. Keep the rest as a ticket to stay. On August 10th, 2020, ETC rises to around $7.20. Natalie decides to sell 1,500 ETC to recover capital and reduce psychological pressure. She receives 1,500 times 7.20, so she receives $10,800. The cost for that 1,500 portion was 1,500 times 3.70, so she put in $5,550. Profit on this portion is 10,800 minus 5,550, so she receives $5,250. She exhales. That exhale is the sound of someone who refuses to be controlled by the market. Crypto explained. Partial profits can save your mindset. She still holds 1,000 ETC. And now the key thing isn't price, it's psychology. Because after you take partial profit, a dangerous voice appears. Why didn't you hold all of it? Why not be greedier? Natalie doesn't listen. She's seen too many ER moments where one late decision costs everything. In money, it's the same. A few seconds late can cost you a year. She sets a rule. If the market gives one more move, sell the rest. If it doesn't, that's fine, because she already recovered capital and locked profit. On November 23, 2020, ETC trades around $6 after heavy shaking. Natalie decides to sell the remaining 1,000 ETC to close the trade in a year full of chaos. She receives 1,000 times 6.00, so she receives $6,000. The cost for that 1,000 portion was 1,000 times 3.70, so she put in $3,700. Profit on this portion is 6,000 minus 3,700, so she receives $2,300. Crypto explained. Clean exits protect your future. Added up, Natalie receives $10,800 from the first sale and receives $6,000 from the second sale. Total proceeds $16,800. Her total cost was $9,250. Profit is $16,800 minus $9,250, so she receives $7,550. To the all-in crowd, that's not flex money. But to Natalie, it's a life win, a real emergency fund, debt paid down, and the most important feeling, control. She uses part of it to prepay health insurance because she knows life can punch you anytime. For her, crypto isn't to get rich overnight. It's to avoid getting poor from one disaster. That's why she wins. She never lets greed drag her into a hallucination. Crypto explained, the goal isn't glory, it's stability. What ETC teaches in 2018 to 2020 is this. A principle doesn't make you immune to risk. Code is law sounds strong, but the network still needs security, hash rate, developers, users. The market doesn't reward a slogan if reality isn't solid enough. And in this period, ETC gets stamped in many minds as dangerous because of reorganizations. That stamp is hard to erase. But because it's hard to erase, when ETC shows signs of standing up, it creates a different kind of attraction, the attraction of something underestimated that still survives. People love survival stories. And if a coin survives, sooner or later the market will test it again, because the market loves testing human belief, again and again. Crypto explained, survival is the first step to a comeback narrative. So after the 2018 to 2020 stretch, what do you see? Marcus represents the person who entered because it's cheaper than ETH, then got crushed because he wouldn't cut loss and let psychology drag him. Natalie represents the person who entered in fear but with a plan, sold in parts, and protected her mind. One side loses $10,560 and loses confidence in himself. The other side receives $7,550 and receives the feeling of control. And here is the final line. Crypto doesn't reward people who are right in philosophy. Crypto rewards people who are right in discipline. ETC walks out of 2020 still carrying security scars and bear market psychological scars, but it also carries something extremely dangerous for the future. It's still alive, and when something is still alive, the market will always give it another chance to explode. Yet only people who learned the 2018 lesson won't get swallowed when that chance arrives. Crypto explained, the comeback chapter is waiting. Stepping into 2021, the market doesn't walk anymore. It runs. It runs in a way that makes people lose control. Anyone who lived through 2018 to 2020 still carries scars. But those scars don't always create fear. Sometimes they create hunger. Hunger to recover. Hunger to prove, I wasn't wrong. ETC at this moment feels like a side character everybody mocked, but it's still standing, still breathing, still alive. And in crypto, still alive is enough for the market to try pumping it again. People love comeback stories. People love drama. ETC has both, the split history, the code is law flag, the proof of work community, and the Ethereum label right inside the name. That combination becomes extremely dangerous when new money returns. Crypto explained, survival is the seed of the next explosion. But 2021 isn't only a price-up story. It's the story of crowd psychology getting inflated like a balloon. You'll see something strange. Coins with old stories suddenly get pulled back into the spotlight because new buyers don't care about the past. They care about what is moving hard right now. And with ETC, moving hard is enough. In a hot market, people don't ask, how's the ecosystem? Are developers building? They ask, how many % did it pump this week? When the question becomes percentages, logic steps back and emotion takes the wheel. That's when 2021 style explosions happen. Fast, violent, surprising, and full of traps. Crypto explained, the louder the crowd, the thinner the thinking. In Ohio, Brandon drives long-haul trucks. His life is straight highways, gas stations, and short sleep. He's not a dreamer, but he hates one thing: being stuck forever in the loop of work, pay, work. He looks at crypto like a possible exit. After 2020, he starts watching ETC for one simple reason. It survived everything, and it's still here. On December 18, 2020, ETC trades around $6.4026. Brandon decides to buy 2,000 ETC. Cost is 2,000 times 6.4026, so he puts in $12,805.2. No flex, no loud talk. He types one sentence into his phone. Bought for the survival story. Crypto explained, quiet entries are often the smartest entries. Then 2021 begins pulling people upward like a stage curtain rising. More headlines, more attention, and most important, fresh money flows in. Brandon drives and checks the price in quick glances. Some days he doesn't even want to look because his heartbeat gets too loud. But he does one thing right. He refuses to let the genius illusion swallow him. He understands the market can give you money fast and it can take it back faster. As ETC enters its fire stage, he starts telling himself, bluntly, "Don't get greedy like an idiot." The words are rough, but they save lives in crypto. Crypto explained, "The market loves punishing greed on schedule." On May 6, 2021, ETC is recorded around $134.10. Brandon doesn't wait for a perfect top. He decides to sell all 2,000 ETC that day. Proceeds are 2,000 times 134.10, so he receives $268,200. His cost was $12,805.2. Profit is $268,200 minus $12,805.2, so he receives $255,394.8 in profit. And here's the key. When the money hits, he doesn't scream, "I'm rich!" He goes quiet. Quiet in a way that chills your spine, because for the first time he realizes life can change direction from one correct decision at the right time. Crypto explained, "The best sells feel like relief, not celebration." What does Brandon do with the money? Not flashy toys. He does what people do when they've been broke. He buys safety. He clears a secondary truck debt, sets aside a real education fund for his child, and puts a down payment on a small home instead of renting forever. The most valuable moment is one evening on the porch, wind moving through the air, and for the first time in years, he exhales without fear. People call crypto a casino sometimes, but the truth is simple. Casino or not depends on how you play. Brandon doesn't play double when I win, double when I lose. He plays enough is enough. That's why he wins. Crypto explained, "Turning profit into peace is the real flex." But the market doesn't stop to congratulate anyone. After the fever, 2022 blows in cold air. Inflation, tightening, shrinking liquidity, and psychology flips from greed to fear faster than people expect. Those who entered late in 2021 begin to understand what Marcus felt in 2018. You open the app, and it's red. Red again, red longer, red deeper. With ETC, the story gets even more complex. ETH prepares to switch to proof of stake, the merge, and proof of work becomes a new flag for people who like mining, like the original, Guasi D like the hard edge. Some people start viewing ETC as the proof of work heritage inside the Ethereum universe. That story keeps a light on for ETC, even if the light isn't as bright as 2021. Crypto explained, "Narratives change, but fear stays the same." In Oregon, Claire is an IT administrator for a logistics company. She doesn't like noise. She likes systems that run stable. She looks at crypto like a network. Sometimes it overloads, sometimes it resets, sometimes it drops. But if you understand cycles, you can survive. She doesn't buy ETC when it's hot. She buys when it's hated. On June 18, 2022, ETC trades around $13.70. Claire decides to buy 5,000 ETC. Cost is 5,000 times 13.70, so she puts in $68,500. And she sets a rule as cold as a machine. No chasing tops, no fantasies. Only wait for a reasonable recovery. Crypto explained, "Buying hated assets requires discipline, not ego." 2022 to 2023 is when people resort their beliefs. Some quit crypto completely, some stay, but only choose what they understand. For Claire, ETC is a strategic choice. Proof of work still has its own community, and the Ethereum Classic name still carries psychological pull. But she also understands one thing: a story isn't enough. Discipline is required. She doesn't stare at the chart every hour. She sets targets. She protects her mindset. Because in a downturn, the first thing that dies isn't the coin, it's your belief in yourself. Crypto explained, "Protecting your mind protects your money." On April 16, 2023, ETC is recorded around $22.27. Claire decides to sell all 5,000 ETC to lock a clear recovery move. Proceeds are 5,000 times 22.27, so she receives $111,350. Her cost was $68,500. Profit is $111,350 minus $68,500, so she receives $42,850. It's not a life flip like Brandon, but it's an adult win. Paying down a loan, increasing an emergency fund, and proving she can make money through discipline without going insane. Crypto explained, smaller wins repeated are how you survive cycles. If you look at these two stories, you'll see ETC has a pattern. It offers massive opportunity when markets are burning hot and moderate opportunity when markets recover. But the trap is always the same. People want one more time and more than enough. Brandon wins because he sells when it's enough. Claire wins because she buys in fear and sells in reason. The people who lose usually share one trait. They want the market to serve their emotions. The market serves no one. After 2021, ETC is no longer a sprint. It's a long road full of potholes. Without discipline, you get thrown out. With discipline, you arrive. Slowly, but you arrive. Crypto explained. Endurance beats excitement every time. So what lesson does ETC leave after you travel from a historical crack to a 2021 explosion and into the cold air of 2022? One brutally honest line. Crypto doesn't reward people who talk well. It rewards people who do it right. The code is law principle gives ETC identity, but discipline is what turns identity into real money. Brandon receives $255,394.80 in profit. Because he knows enough is enough, Claire receives $42,850 in profit because she refuses to chase noise. ETC will keep getting mentioned whenever people talk proof of work, heritage, the original chain. And every time the market heats up, old stories come back like glowing coal. But remember, glowing coal is beautiful. Touch it wrong and you get burned.